Heyo, and what is up, gang? Thank you for checking out Sledgehammer TV today. It's time for the NXT review, but before we get that started, I want to ask you guys a very serious question about this show. Do you think it's at all possible that Triple H and the gang down there at Full Sail actually don't give a shit about what's going on over in AEW on a week-to-week basis? Because it seems to me, by what we've been getting on USA Network, that they are comfortable being complacent and giving us what's brought them to the dance thus far. They're not overbooking their cards for weekly television, and we've gotten just another very standard episode of NXT with a couple of very big highlights to talk about, and we are going to do just that right here and right now. My name is Nick Nightmare, and you are watching the Sledgehammer Wrestling Show NXT on USA Review. Let's do it. Now let's elaborate on this a little bit further. You see, I know that NXT is aware of AEW. We all know that they went head-to-head on purpose. They have been counter-programming pay-per-views and events to go head-to-head with NXT in a live atmosphere as well, house shows and whatnot. And that is all true, and we know that this is a war for the fans, but I think it's a very one-sided war. I feel like AEW is the only one taking this war very seriously, and NXT is just going through the motions, and we're going to show you what we're about. We're going to give you what NXT has always been, and you're going to take it or you're going to leave it. You see, it feels like all these counter-programming moves against AEW are really meant to do nothing more than to split the audience. And why would you do that? Why would you want to split the audience? It's something that concerned Vince McMahon during the Monday Night War, because essentially what you're doing is taking a wrestling audience that is generally one. You know, if there is one show dedicated to one night, a wrestling audience is going to watch that one show. If there are two shows, you are going to split the audience, and the fan base is going to be split in half just right off the bat for both shows. And what does that accomplish? Well, what it does is it makes the impact of AEW feel quite diminished. All of their numbers aren't going to be astronomical. They're not going to make as big of a splash as they should, because there is a great chunk of the audience who are WWE loyalists that are going to come and watch NXT and then maybe catch up on AEW, which affects the ratings overall. This was probably the master plan. Triple H and these guys, they're not looking to initiate a war by any means. All they're trying to do is lessen the importance and make it look like it's not as important as it is. They're trying to just diminish AEW, not allowing it to look as good as it should. Because you know, if NXT didn't exist on Wednesday night, everybody that calls themselves a wrestling fan will be tuning into AEW, at the very least, just to see what they're about. Whether or not we'd stick around is another story, and we covered all that on the AEW review, and we will do the head-to-head NXT versus AEW coming up this Saturday night with the presentation of the Poop Hammer Award, and I want to know what you guys think maybe are some suggestions for this week's Poop Hammer Award. Leave those in the comment section down below. Don't forget to drop your hammers down as well. Leave your little sledgehammer emoji along with your comments so you can bring the hammer down as well. Bring the hammer down on anything you want in this show, because essentially, like I said, this was a very standard and somewhat missable for the most part episode of NXT, because we had matches like Boa versus Killian Dane. We had Garza versus Tommaso Ciampa in his in-ring return. We had Io Shirai versus Lacey Lane with her new name, which I forget at this moment. And we had a not a tag team championship match, because that would have been cool. But we had a tag team matchup between Oney Lorcan and Danny Burch versus two members of the Imperium. And when you group all of these things together and look at everything else we got on this card outside of these matches, these were filler. These were matches that didn't really mean anything. They were thrown together off the back of some quickly put together storylines from last week, as in the case of Boa and Killian Dane and Tommaso and Garza. And they wanted to give it some sort of, meat behind the reason why they're fighting tonight. And I get it, I guess, but none of this stuff was necessary. In fact, these 4 matches should be one episode of NXT on its own. It's one of the things that I don't like about the 2-hour format. It's forcing NXT to put matches on that probably could be missed for all of us. Like, it's just unimportant to see Tommaso Ciampa versus Angel Garza. Do you think Angel Garza's going to beat Ciampa in his in-ring return? Especially after what happened with them last week? There's no way. There's no way. So you're just diminishing Garza at this point. This is a guy you want on the up and up. You're pumping him up. You're giving him TV time. You're saying he's a big star. He's got the moneymaker thing going on. But what am I looking at? Why are we watching this? I don't know. Just to get Tommaso Ciampa an easy win on his way back? He's above this. He doesn't need these kind of things. It was just put together to give Ciampa a match on the card, give the fans a reason to go crazy, and to put together this show. Because now it's 2 hours, and it really would be much better served in the 1-hour format. Even if they segmented them as hour 1 and hour 2 and maybe produced them separately, maybe that would help. I don't know. But putting it together in this live environment makes it kind of draggy, man. NXT just feels sometimes like it drags on. We had matchups like my favorite bro, Matt Riddle, versus the big guy. I forget his name now, too. I'm going to get him all off of the notes in a second. But when these guys went at it, you guys who watch the show, you all know I'm not very big on Matt Riddle. But when the bell rings, this guy is great. This guy is great. I hate the no-shoe wearing, stupid little Riddle dance he does, and his weird face and his whole I'm a stoner vibe. It just... something about him doesn't grasp me, but as soon as that bell rings, and he has a match tonight, like he had with the big kid. I forgot his name. Damn it, let me see. Let me just scroll down because it's pissing me off that I don't remember his name. He deserves for me to remember his name, but I'm drawing a blank. Bronson Reed. Bronson Reed versus Matt Riddle. We had this matchup. At first I thought I was watching Jay versus Silent Bob. I'm like, when did they become wrestlers and why are they fighting each other? But all kidding aside, this was a match that was not filler. This was a match that was deserving to be on NXT tonight. This was a match that got my attention. It definitely made me look at Matt Riddle in a better light. It put a great light on Bronson Reed as well. This guy came out looking like aces, and I would love to see this further in a program. I would like to see this feud be a thing going forward. They got something there, I think, with these two, but we all know Matt Riddle is not going to stick around for feuds with Bronson Reed. They're going to move him up the card fairly quickly. We had... on the negative side of things, the Lorcan Birch versus the Imperium match. What was to gain from this matchup? To me, the Imperium is underwhelming. I'm a fan of Walter. I'm not really too much of a fan of his faction. Lorcan and Birch have been a steadfast tag team in NXT for years. They've been doing their thing, and they deserve to be highlighted as more than enhancement talent that are being around, putting over whoever it is that's the flavor of the month. Lorcan and Birch should have at least one time been tag team champions, and just a waste of their talents to me. If they wanted to really book this card correctly, you could have had Tegan Knox make her return. You could have had the Priest versus Dunn match. You have the Riddle versus Reed match. The Undisputed with their reveal of what they did to the Velveteen Dream and everything that happened after that, setting up for the main event of the evening, which would have been Dominik Dijakovic versus Keith Lee. And then you could have had the Finn Balor announcement that he's coming back around. They're really pushing Finn Balor ever since he's come back to the Yellow Brand. And that would have been enough. But I think that's only about an hour. So why do these other matches exist? Filler. One more thing I want to talk about with the Boa Killian Dane thing. First of all, Boa, they had to show you what happened last week, and he wants revenge on Killian Dane. If this guy couldn't beat Cameron Grimes, Why is he going out there to fight Killian Dane? Do you guys have any reason to believe Boa is going to be able to beat a Killian Dane after what you've seen from him last week? So tonight's matchup is a further embarrassment on that kid. And the crazy camera work during the entrance of Killian Dane was making me absolutely sick. I thought I was having a seizure for a minute. I had to rewind it and make sure it was happening again. And then I was regretting doing that because now I had to sit through it all for a second time. All the super zooms and the weird erratic movement. What are you, some indie film kid from college? Just let the pictures tell the story. We don't need all this crazy director of photography nonsense. Don't try to make your living trying to make things cool when they don't need to be made that way. Let's talk about this card so we can get out of here, because with the exception of the Dijakovic and Lee match and the main event, which was Pete Dunne versus Damian Priest, there's really not all too much to talk about. Tommaso Ciampa defeated Angel Garza in a match that we really didn't need. Very easy win for Ciampa. The Undisputed Era came down ringside, surrounded the ring after the match. Ciampa sat down in the folding chair in the middle of the ring. He had still his crutch and everything with him. They then gave a USB drive to Mauro Ranallo that contained something about what the Undisputed Era did to the Velveteen Dream, how they attacked him. Roderick Strong then cut a promo on the Dream while he was laying there unconscious, saying that he should have never embarrassed him. He was laid out. His clothes were all torn up. He was completely out of it. What does this mean? This means that there will be no North American Championship matchup, but that is not the case. William Regal would make things right and say that the winner of tonight's Donovan, I keep doing that because that was his name, Dominic Dijakovic versus Keith Lee match will now be the new number one contender for the North American title, and I thought that was great. And that would also be grounds to make that have been the main event. That should have been the way this show went off the air. But it's not. Another thing wrong with tonight's show. Nothing major, really, but still, you got to call them out where you see them. The Imperium, Fabian Eichner, and Marcel Barthel. What does this guy think? He's a monkey? Marcel Barthel? Awful name. They defeated Danny Burch and Oney Lorcan in a pretty decent tag team matchup, but with all the tag team action we had last night, there was nothing that they did tonight that I didn't already see, so I actually enjoyed AEW's tag team matchups across the board better than I enjoyed this one. That's just my opinion. Io Shirai defeated Caden Carter, which is the new name of Lacey Lane, who was rather impressive in the Mae Young Classic, but once again, there is no reason for you to think for 1 minute that Io Shirai is going to lose to Caden Carter unless there is going to be an upset among all upsets. This match was a little bit back and forth and a little crazy on the onset, but very quickly and with a matter-of-fact punctuality, Io Shirai took care of Caden Carter with the greatest of ease. That was not the big thing to take away from this matchup. After the matchup, Io Shirai would actually take the mic and she would say, not Rhea, not Bianca. She wants another shot at Shayna Baszler's championship, which would prompt Rhea Ripley to come out. There was a nice little face-to-face. Rhea Ripley had something to say, definitely put Io Shirai in her place, and then Io Shirai would leave very slowly, screaming in Japanese, all these crazy things. Rhea Ripley definitely got into her head. It was great. I enjoyed all of that. I didn't enjoy the promo that they gave for Boa, where he's standing in the back talking in Chinese, saying all this stuff. I don't know what he's saying. I hope he's giving us the whole reason why we should give a shit about him after he lost in 3 seconds flat to a guy that looks like a wandering chimp in a funny top hat. Why should we care about Boa? Now we don't even know why even further to care about Boa, because he's not even speaking in English, and he don't have a translator, they don't have subtitles, so he's just talking to everybody in the world, saying a bunch of stuff that we don't know what it means, unless you speak the same language as Boa. You know what Boa means? Boa means you're dead. You're dead. That's what it means. William Regal broke the breaking news about the Velveteen Dream and all of the changes he was going to make, making the North American Championship matchup for next week. Keith Lee versus Dominik Dijakovic ended in a no contest thanks to the involvement of Roderick Strong. This match was actually not as impressive as some of the ones we had leading up to this matchup. This was their fourth encounter. We had one double count out and we have one victory each. They were calling this the rubber match, and they did what I would have done here, and they had this end without a definitive winner, giving this feud legs to continue to grow because it has become my favorite feud in all of NXT. I'm not a huge fan of when the guys their size go all acrobatic and pretend to be luchadors, but they scaled some of that back tonight, and we had a very impressive matchup between Keith Lee and Dominik Dijakovic, which was great, and now we can look forward to it even more. They didn't kill it, they didn't end it, and they added the stakes and made them even higher because they are both now added to the NXT North American Championship matchup next week live on USA, and that is going to be one that you do not want to miss. These two gigantic men are going to be gunning after the champion, who is easily half the size of both of them. It's going to be a hell of a matchup. If anything that we've been getting from these two on this feud so far is any indication, and then you add in the craziness of Roderick Strong, who has just been on a tear as of late, it's going to be something. It's going to be really something. Matt Riddle defeated Bronson Reed in this very, very good matchup. It was a little quick. Actually, not as quick as I thought they were going to make it, but it was a good matchup. It was a good outing for both of these men. They came out looking like stars in the end. It actually got Riddle a little bit more over with me as far as his in-ring action and the way he performs as a professional wrestler. His persona and his wearing of the Yankee pinstripes and his ridiculous dance and his decision to not wear shoes and his repetitive knee striking are just things for me that just need to go away. But they're not going to, so I'm just going to have to get over it and see where we go on this ride with Mr. Matt Riddle. We seen a promo by Bianca Belair, which was great, and she was calling out Rhea Ripley, telling her she's not going to get in the way of her championship dreams and her path to Shayna Baszler. This was followed by the return of Tegan Knox as she went one-on-one with Taynara Conti, who I can't stand. I just don't. I mean, she's a cute girl. She's got koopy eyes and everything, but in the ring, she's been around for so long, you would expect her to have really grown way more than she has shown to be in the ring. It's the amount of improvement is not there. The improvement is not there. I have the same complaints about her now that I did when I seen her in the first Mae Young Classic, which didn't improve by the time we got to the second Mae Young Classic, and I'm not really all that impressed with her as far as we get here. That's not to say that this was a bad match so much. It's just she's got a lot of work to do, and hopefully they pinpoint what it is that she needs to sharpen up on, because there's just something a little bit off about Taynara. Tegan Knox in a good matchup on her debut, back coming in off of a good performance in the Mae Young Classic where she actually got the injury that kept her out. She was a favorite to win the whole thing before that happened. Knox pinned Conchi on NXT TV tonight, and it was just fine. After this, again, that was not the story. The match was an afterthought, as the main story came after the fact. Dakota Kai, Tegan Knox's best friend, comes down to the ring to join in the celebration, and they would be confronted by a very unimpressed Shayna Baszler with her horsewomen best friends at her side. And this is an interesting thing going forward. Tegan Knox may be the one being groomed to unseat Shayna Baszler before they unload her onto one of the two main roster shows in the near future. Maybe that's not the case, or maybe this is just going to be the beginning of a feud that's going to span throughout the next year on all of NXT television. Who knows, man? Who knows? All I know is I'm interested. They definitely need to even the odds. So who is it that they're going to get to team up with Dakota Kai and Tegan Knox at some point? Possibly a Candice LeRae somewhere down the line as they get set to do battle with 3 of the 4 horsewomen. Looks like something interesting. Can't shit on it because it looks interesting, and I want to see where it goes from here. The very cool Finn Balor vignette talking about he rediscovered his heart, saying next week his future will be his past. I don't know what that means, but if anything about Finn Balor being cryptic from his past shows true, then you know this is going to be something pretty interesting. Killian Dane submitted Boa with a stretch submission. This was a waste of everybody's time. A video package hyped the new NXT Cruiserweight Champion, Lio Rush. Announced for next week on NXT was Bianca Belair and Rhea Ripley. Prior to the matchup, we were about to enjoy Damian Priest versus Pete Dunne. Killian Dane was still making his way out of the arena and he passed Pete Dunne on the stage. Pete Dunne grabbed his hand and started to break Killian Dane's fingers for some reason. I guess he was just really pissed off at his beard, maybe. I don't know. Or maybe he knew that match shouldn't have been on this card. Or maybe he's a good friend of Boa. Maybe Pete Dunne and Boa are buddies. And he's like, you know what? I'm going to get this guy for you, Boa. Don't worry. I'm going to break his knucks. I don't know. Seemed a little out of nowhere. A little bit random. Damian Priest pinned Pete Dunne after a low blow followed by his reckoning finisher. And this match was really, really good. It was a very fast-paced, back-and-forth encounter. A lot of good high spots. A very evenly fought matchup. There was no way you could have called who was going to win in the end. You can't always have matches finish in a no contest or a DQ or a schmaz-like finish, although that would have been my preference here. Personally, because I'm a huge fan of both of these guys independently, I don't want to see either of them taking a loss ever, because they're both tremendous and special athletes, and this was a great matchup to end the night. Should not have been the main event. It really shouldn't have been. This should have been the middle of the show, and the main event should have been Dijakovic versus Lee with the implication of the North American Championship. But this was a great way to go off if that wasn't going to be the case. This match just went on and on. Pete Dunne tried to break Damian Priest's fingers on multiple occasions. We had Pete Dunne going for moonsaults, Damian Priest doing suicide dives and planches off of the ropes. It was crazy, crazy action. It was really, really entertaining. The finish would see Pete Dunne going for another moonsault, but Damian Priest would get his knees up. And finally, that would turn the tide as Priest kicked Dunne with a low blow as the referee was trying to separate them in the corner. She did not see the offense. Damian Priest took advantage, hit the reckoning, scores the pinfall. This was a decent show. We had 2 fantastic matches. The rest of the episode did an okay job. It kind of introduced you to some people if you weren't familiar with it, but as an NXT fan for all the years that I've known NXT, I have been infinitely more entertained by some 1-hour editions of this show than I was on this night during this Wednesday Night War. A very one-sided war. I'm telling you guys, they're not counter-programming their actual show. They're only trying to make it not so easy for AEW. You're going to have your spot, you're going to have your fans, but we're not going to make it that easy on you by just disappearing and leaving the audience for you. We're going to make it much harder. Even though AEW consistently has been beating NXT in the ratings over the course of the last 3 weeks, both shows have showed a decline in ratings from the week to week. It'll be interesting to see what happens next week on both of these shows. AEW is ramping up for full gear. NXT is destinationless as of this moment as far as pay-per-views are concerned. It just didn't have that bang. You know, NXT, you're watching, it usually just has that bang, man, so that when you're done, you feel like you've accomplished something, and you just feel like you just had a great night with your best girl, you know what I mean? And you feel good. This had a couple of feel-good moments, but it's almost like you never got that big pop at the end. And if you understand what I mean, then you are an adult. Congratulations, and you enjoy mature humor. And ladies and gentlemen, that's all we're going to talk about. Because like I said, NXT, kind of much ado about nothing. 2 pretty stellar matches, and outside of that, just a bunch of stuff that could have been spread across the next couple of episodes just as easily as it was shoved at us all in this one. Don't forget to check out the AEW review for all of my thoughts and opinions on that show, because as good as that show was, every wrestling show has its mistakes, and it is our job to point them out to you, which is why we outline everything wrong with every wrestling show that you guys get your eyes on. It is your job to come back here and get it all out of your system and bring down the hammers with me and see if we could pinpoint how we can fix this show and what exactly is wrong with all wrestling shows in general. That's the job of a critic, man. That's what we do. We critique. And if you don't like that, then don't be watching shows that are called Everything Wrong with this show, which are obviously a critique. That's it. Thank you guys for checking us out. Once again, if it's your first time here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and join the over 2,000 strong that know that when you want your wrestling news with a lot of entertainment, a lot of fun, and no bullshit, that Sledgehammer TV is the place to be. Don't forget to like this video, smash that thumbs up if you enjoyed anything we said or did here today, and then share this video with each and every one of your wrestling buddies all over the wrestling world, especially if they felt like NXT was just a little bit off a step, but still pretty darn good. You could direct their attention right here and they could join in on the fun right now. Don't forget to leave your comments and drop your hammers down below, and check out everything else we have on the channel. Everything wrong with Raw, everything wrong with AEW, NXT, SmackDown, Hell in a Cell, everything wrong with the Wednesday Night War. We have last week's week 2, and it will be coming at you this Saturday night for week 3. My name is Nick Nightmare. This is the team. Thor the Sledgehammer, the official Sledgehammer of the Sledgehammer Wrestling Show. His tag team partner, the World Heavyweight Champion of all the microphones in all the world, Mr. Blue, the Snowball. The most important member of the team, as always, is each and every one of you. That is going to do it, and we are out of here. And we will see you next time right here on your new favorite wrestling show, the Sledgehammer Wrestling Show, only on Sledgehammer TV, right here on YouTube.com.